All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict show. Very, very excited to be with you, given the nature of the topic we're gonna be dealing with. So, how are you, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Oh,
So-
you can hear me, right?
Yes.
We're not in the same studio, by the way, guys. We're doing it remotely this time around. So, as you can tell by the background. So, but that's the beauty of technology. To me now makes me think about, maybe I'll move to country A and we'll still do it from there. Why not?
That's a fantastic idea. I love it.
Well, I am thinking about it, given where things are headed in America. So anyway,
Oh my gosh,
let's get into our sort of these developments that's taking place, and this one has to do with the retaliation of Iran into Israel in response to Israel attacking the Iranian consulate in Damascus. So, we can't do this, Elizabeth, without saying thank you to Hamed.
Oh yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. O, for all your hard work, and thank you so much. We greatly appreciate your support, Hamed. It means a lot. So as we said, in response to Israel attacking the Iranian consulate in Damascus. But I do find it very ironic how the Western world now is sort of, what's the word I'm looking? Manipulating the masses.
Yeah.
Can we listen to that video from none other than Cameron?
Oh my God.
It's laughable.
It made me literally, David, laugh out loud when I saw it. Because it really highlights, Iran, they had an embassy, okay? Like the attack was on an embassy. And if that happened in the Western world to any Western country, all right, let me just share this with you guys because it's absolutely hilarious. So this is David Cameron talking about Iran's reaction to what happened. Take a listen.
A reckless and dangerous thing for Iran to have done. And I think the whole world can see all these countries that have somehow wondered, well, what is the true nature of Iran? It's there in black and white.
What would Britain do if a hostile nation flattened one of our consulates?
Well, we would take the very strong action.
Oh, really? Would you now? But Iran would do the same thing, but Britain absolutely would.
Yeah. It shows you the hypocrisy at the highest order, or of the highest order. I mean, now Western leaders, let's just be honest about it, because we know how it is. Western leaders have no credibility anymore. So all what he's saying basically is a reflection of truly how things are within the West when it comes down to selling the narrative to the masses.
Yeah.
But also becomes important on the masses themselves to educate themselves and understand when they are being manipulated. So that is what's at the heart of it at all. So let's talk about the nature of the retaliation of Iran. So the first question, as a geopolitical analyst personally and as a former military, I would be asking, okay, why was Iran limited in its retaliation? Because it was very, very, very limited. A lot of people are saying, oh, is that all? Well, yeah, there is a reason for that.
Right.
It's because you can react emotionally to something like this that could really get out of control. And if it gets out of control, you're looking at a direct and open war between Iran and Israel.
Right.
And that in itself, mark my word on this, that it won't be limited just to Iran and Israel. You will be looking at other major powers getting involved directly or indirectly, one way or another. And this is something that needs to be avoided. And again, if we are to really go by what international law says, according to Article 51, which, by the way, one of the viewers corrected me last time because I think I said Article 55. No, it's Article 51. And thank you very much for correcting me on this. It's just I get overlapped with numbers, whatever. Article 51 of the UN Charter basically deals with the location of embassies around the world. They are to be protected.
Yeah.
So, and that bears the question of what gives Israel the right to go and attack an Iranian consulate. Enemy or not enemy, beside the point, there is something called international law, and you ought to observe that. For me personally, I did see the justification for why Israel did what it did in Syria, but not in another country. Because if hypothetically, let's just go hypothetical here. Let's say Israel attacked Iran's embassy in, let's just pick Malaysia or Indonesia. What is the problem with that? That will be the violation of the airspace of either country, either Malaysia or Indonesia, depending on where it goes. Which means what? That means Malaysia or Indonesia reserves the right to shoot down any planes that crosses its airspace without notification. So Israel ended up doing it in Syria because we know where Syria is today as far as the chaos that exists. And second, we do have American presence in Syria. So it's almost like it's justified to do so, which violate the law, international law, that is. So, and this is where Iran, a response was very, very limited for a reason. Again, it doesn't want, one, to draw in Israel into an open war. And second, Iran doesn't want to expose what it has, because all this send is about over, to some account. One account I found that it was over 100 missiles and drones. Another account I found over 300.
Yeah. So there's a couple of interesting facts about what you brought up just now. One is the fact that Israel started this. Like if you're talking about the sort of tit for tat that's going back and forth right now, Israel started it with this attack on the embassy, right? And it's a smoldering hole. Like it's not like it was gentle attack, and it killed I think it's like 6 officials. So that's a really that's an attack on an embassy. You just heard it actually from David Cameron, that would cause a really big reaction from any other country. And so it's very interesting because there is that sort of voice that's saying, well, this is all Iran had. They just had, these weapons, and it wasn't anything compared to, US and Israel. Because they shot just about everything down, like almost nothing hit. They shot everything down. But there's a couple of things that are interesting about that. The first is that it is very possible that Iran was paying attention to what the US and Israel actually had. So if there was a conflict that would break out in the larger Middle Eastern area, what capacities do the US and Israel, is the US really, because they're who supplies the weapons to Israel, but what capabilities does the US really have? So in its own way, it was a very interesting test to see what it is that they potentially could have had. And so I think that was interesting too. And I think you're absolutely right that fundamentally Iran does not want to start a larger war in the Middle East. Like that seems very, very clear, because could they have retaliated more? Absolutely.
Of course.
Embassy. They have to have enormous pressure internally in Iran to respond to that. Any country would. And so to do nothing is unfortunately not acceptable. But at this point, how far does an eye for an eye go? Because Israel came out and they said, well, we're going to retaliate even harder. And then the US said, take this victory, which to the US credit, whether I believe that they're going to follow through on that or not, it's its own thing. But to the US credit, they said, take this victory and stop right now. What do you think of that, actually?
Well, the US is because the US reached out to Iran through a third party, by the way, which a lot of people do not know. We are trying to minimize the impact. The reason being because of the presidential elections here in the US. And why is that important? It has to do with, if things gets escalated, one of the areas going to be impacted has to do with none other than energy.
Oil.
You're looking at oil. So Iran has the capability of shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. And if you know anything about Strait of Hormuz, you know that 1/4 of the global oil goes through that. So, and Iran will be in position to shut it down. And this is why the idea of the US reaching out to Iran behind closed doors to like, okay, just either limit your retaliation or just, we don't want it to escalate. But there is another reason for why the US did that also. The US is also concerned about its interests in the region, in West Asia or Middle East, that is. Why? Because most missiles that Iran produced are within range to any location in Western Asia regarding US installations.
Yeah.
Which means now, and I did argue this back then when I wrote my book about Iran. Way back. Yeah, I argued back then that it behooves Israel to think twice. It behooves the US to think twice about attacking Iran directly. And this is why now you have Israel saying, well, we're going to retaliate. Well, the options are very limited.
Yeah.
Very, very limited. Now, Israel is saying, well, we got to go after the Iran nuclear facilities. No, you won't be able to. The reason being because those bunkers are very deep in under the mountains, very, very deep. Not even a Boston bomb or what you call them, the one we used in Afghanistan. But it won't do it. Those are very deep down. Second, it becomes the question of, because here's one thing, once again, Western audience does not know, is that before Iran launched its retaliation, it informed countries in the region. Why do you think that is? It informed them because the airspace issue. It was only one country, which is Jordan, because this guy, the so-called king, betrayed the Arabs and Muslim or whatever. He is, you know, this might shock you. There are now conversation about him being an MI6 agent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the king himself. Because remember, his mom is British or was British. How did the Jordanian came to power, the kingdom? How did it came to power to begin with? It was the British that put him there. So that's the equivalency of what we experienced with the Shah in Iran back in the 50s.
Yeah.
Who put the Shah in power? We did.
Right.
Is the same arguments can be made.
And that's well known. I mean, that's not like a surprise. That's very well known.
Indeed. And this is why now Jordanians are pissed at this monarchy. I am starting to think in terms of the end of the monarchy is near, one way or another. So, but beside the point, Iran did alert or mention to other countries that, hey, we're gonna be attacking Israel. So, and this will be the same in reverse. If hypothetically Israel decides to go all the way in, which it can't anyway, but let's say hypothetically it wants to go all the way in to target Iran, it has to go through some airspace of, for example, Saudi Arabia, for example, Iraq, for example, Lebanon. Do you think those countries will allow it? I don't think so, except for two countries, Jordan and Egypt. Why? Because those are in the pockets of the United States with a yearly monetary. Egypt gets 1.4 or $1.2 billion a year, and Jordan gets $1 billion a year from the US. So that's the only reason I see it. But it won't happen because Israel does not have the capability to go all the way in Iran and target it. That means what? The US will have to get involved to provide fueling for the fighter jets.
So it's interesting that you brought that up, because I think the real question fundamentally is, why is this happening at all? Right? Why this is absolutely unnecessary. Why is this happening at all? And the prevailing theory absolutely is, and this is my personal opinion also, is that Israel is trying to drag the United States into this conflict. Like really drag the United States into this conflict. And if there was an open war in the Middle East, the United States unfortunately would have to step in. And so I think that that's extremely I've had sort of questions overall about sort of what Netanyahu has been thinking this entire time, because a lot of what is coming out of Israel seems, and even who was it? Lloyd Austin, maybe, who said this, but he said fundamentally long term this actually doesn't serve them very well, and so these choices, they seem very calculated, and they seem almost in a sense to really be pushing the boundaries of what is and what is or will turn into an open war or a larger war in the Middle East. And
yeah,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, so really bringing up, the United States has, interestingly enough, taken the position at this particular moment, and whether that's something that the United States will actually stick to should this escalate, is take the win, do not escalate this any further. We do not want this oil instability. And especially for Biden, if a war erupted in the Middle East in a larger sense, I think it would make it very questionable whether he would get re-election or not, because that is not a popular, and especially if 1/4 of the world's oil supply somehow was derailed. You know the price that oil would skyrocket here in the United States? It would be astronomical.
That's true. And the second thing is that you have to consider what is the reaction of the Iran's allies, the likes of China and Iran. Because remember,
Russia.
Yeah, Iran. What did I say?
You said China and Iran.
Oh, China and Russia.
You meant Russia.
I'm getting them overlapped. So, and again, the whole idea of this is because, and once again, and I am going to share something that I talked about a few years ago. I'm talking about, this might shock you, 2014. 2014, I wrote an article. Let me share it with you all. I'm going to put it in the chat box, guys, so you can take a look at it there. Back then, I argued about the idea of the alliance between Iran, China, and Russia. Back then, when I used to write for the Huffington Post. And I argued back then that should there be a conflict in the region, those countries will get involved. And this is why, if Israel thinks that, oh, we can just do it because the US is going to come in, it will draw in other major powers, mainly Russia and China, because they do have interests.
Yep.
And to them, meaning to both Russia and China, this is a perfect opportunity for really cementing that shift in the geopolitical landscape, one way or another. And that's why it will be a miscalculation on part of Israel. US is trying to pressure Israel, but of course to no avail, because politicians in the US are controlled by the lobbyists, the Israeli lobby in Washington. But the consequences of the conflict in itself will go beyond just Iran and Israel.
Yeah.
You're already seeing right now two main events taking place inside Israel. One of them has to do with the stock market. Stock market inside Israel is tampering down very bad. And second thing, it has to do with the idea of a lot of Israelis are leaving Israel right now. It's because
yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Corey just came in here. My husband just came in because he didn't see you, David.
Oh, I thought that. I'm on the air here, Corey, from a different location. Yeah. Hello to you, Corey. I can hear you. So anyway, that is the idea of now you get this too, and it becomes the question of because here is the thing, with just this event, meaning the retaliation, what happened to Gaza? Do you hear anything about Gaza anymore?
No. That's so interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. So this is what's important.
Right.
It shows you what? It shows you the magnitude of really an open war between Iran and Israel.
Yeah.
Will be, that's it. Nothing else will matter. Nothing else will matter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you want to hear? So it's actually interesting. The UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez actually came out against this. So, I mean, this is the UN Security Council, and there's actually been a lot of pushback on the UN Security Council, basically saying you guys did not do anything. You guys did not only did you not prevent this, but you are not stepping into an appropriate amount. Do you want to hear what UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez has to say about this? And quite frankly, I'm actually very appreciative that there are people who are willing to speak for this needs to calm down. Okay, so let's take a listen to him. Oh, can you guys hear him?
No,
David,
I
can
can't.
you hear him?
No, I can't.
Okay, well, I guess we're not going to listen to him right now.
No worries. So, but here is the thing: is the idea of, and by the way, that's Army with Harmony. Good to see you, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, he mentioned about an open war. How can we define it? I don't know if the question was meant for us or not. But anyway, since we're talking about it, we may as well just give an idea. An open war means that there will be nothing off limits as far as we're talking about cyber, we're talking about missiles, we're talking about energy, we're talking about blockades, we're talking about, that's what I meant by an open war. But the problem on this, or the concern about this, is that will Israel go as far as using its nuclear weapons? That is the key question, because that will be like beyond the red line here. The U.S., as I said, the U.S. is not in a position to control what Israel does. But remember, there's only small elements inside the Israeli government, including the current prime minister. I don't see them going that far, because the retaliation from Iran will be also severe. It might not be to the level of a nuke, but Iran will have now the reason to push forward with its nuclear program.
Yep.
And that will be the major victory over Israel, or the West for that matter, that now Iran will move forward with developing, because they can enrich uranium above 80%. Once you start enriching uranium above 80%, that means you can turn it into weapons grade, which means it will be just few weeks. You do the testing, and that's it.
You want to hear kind of a funny, I mean, I guess it's not funny, but it's like an interesting piece of information.
Yeah.
So you're talking about uranium, right? And Iran getting, uranium and enriching it to a particular amount. And it's very interesting that, did you know that during all of the sanctions between US and Russia, there's one thing that was not, in fact, sanctioned from Russia to the US? Do you want to know what it was? It's uranium.
Uranium, yeah, because we import uranium from Russia.
We're still importing uranium from Russia. So that's very interesting, considering all of the rest of the sanctions. Why is it uranium that is allowed to continue? But uranium, Iran and Russia do have a very good relationship. And at that point, I mean, is for whatever reason, does the U.S. not think that uranium is going to be coming into Iran from Russia still? Do you know what I mean? So I think fundamentally, that is really the bigger question, because is this the start of World War III, right? We have two fronts on which people are asking that. They're asking that in regards to Ukraine, Russia, and they're looking at this in regards to the Middle East as a whole, whether that turns into a larger open war or not.
Yeah. Well,
that's terrifying also.
I know it is. It's just the idea of World War III, like most of us will know the setting of it back in World War I and World War II. To me personally, and my opinion is that I don't see it in the same setting as it, because time has changed, circumstances have changed. It's a different dynamics now. You don't have to deal with sending your troops to an open field and you fight the other. No, it doesn't work that way anymore.
Yeah.
And this is why Iran, in my opinion, was very, very limited by design into how it wanted to retaliate against Israel. Because remember, it didn't even use any advanced missile systems. It didn't use its hypersonic, which it has, of course, thanks to Russia providing the technology. And even I will go as far as another country that might have helped Iran into this realm of missiles. Can you guys guess which country is that? Let me see in the chat box if you can guess which country played the role. I was aware of it back then when I was still in Washington. Now, of course, it was like, wow, whoever. Oh, you got it. You got it. JC. Mm-hmm. JC got it. American Army with Harmony. You guys. North Korea.
Yep.
There is a factor into this. And the idea that for us to be thinking, oh, an open war will not draw in other key players.
That's insanity.
It's a mistake. And we're not even talking about the groups inside West Asia that are aligned or allied with Iran, the likes of the both groups in Lebanon and Yemen and Iraq.
Yeah. That's the other portion of this, right? And so there's these H groups that we...
Yes.
Right. So there's these age groups in these other countries that are surrounding. And what are they going to do? Just sit around? They're not going to join in on this?
That's true.
Right?
Yeah. And
of course they are.
Yeah. And this is why I think Israel didn't calculate this very strategically, thinking that it can ruin the United States into fighting its war against Iran. Right. The U.S. does not. The U.S. does not want a war with Iran. Not out of fear, not out of... It just doesn't make sense to fight Iran.
Well,
go ahead. Because the dynamics have changed. Back then, we used to have two arch enemies, Saudi Arabia and Iran. We could pit one each against the other. Not anymore. Not anymore.
Thanks to China.
Yeah.
I'd really like to get this video to work if I can, but I think that's a very interesting direction, because I think you're right. It really is, in a sense, trying to figure out whether how far Israel can push the United States. But I think Israel miscalculated in a really fundamental way, and that is that they don't understand, number one, fundamentally how tired Americans are of war. There is war fatigue here in the United States. And that's very easy to happen because there is no real cohesive understanding of why there is war. Because even the "it's for democracy" narrative absolutely fell apart. So it's not for democracy. And even though, we have Russia as the ultimate bad guy, right? Tucker Carlson went and did a Vladimir Putin interview in which he came across, whether he was being honest or not, he came across as actually very honest and genuine, and said a lot of things that were true and that are verifiably true, that the American people can actually verify is true. And one of them is, why are you devaluing your currency? And so apparently since 2019, groceries have gone up 40%. Groceries, right? This is food. Basic foodstuffs have gone up 40%. Have incomes gone up 40% also? No. Incomes have not gone, they've not even caught up to inflation. And so it's very hard for the United States, and it's an election year. I think that may have gone differently if it wasn't an election year, but right now the race between Biden and Trump is actually shockingly close. And so I think Israel doesn't quite understand. It has had sort of unequivocal support of the government in the United States, but even the fact that there's pushback in Congress on sending money to Ukraine and Israel right now is very interesting.
Yeah, but it's not from the likes of Lindsey Graham, who is pushing Israel to put. Yeah, but you got the like Lindsey Graham. You got the likes of Marco Rubio, senator from Florida. They are in the pockets of AIPAC and pushing Israel to go ahead and attack Iran and saying, we will support you.
Yeah.
No, they're not going to send their kids to fight. They don't have any anyway, whatever the case might be. And second, who the heck are you to be pushing us into over the cliff for something we don't want to be part of? Money.
Absolutely. And those voices, though, are starting to be called out by the American people who are really tired of this. And even gas increase, even right now, is substantial. And so you add onto that, you add 1/4 of the global oil supply being disrupted, and I tell you, there is going to be revolt here in the United States. Biden will be out faster than you can snap your fingers, because right now people are really struggling to survive. And it's very interesting because you look at all the people coming in from the south border, and these people, a lot of them, I'm sure, came for a better life. They came with the promise of America is the land of opportunity. But for those of us who are here, everyone that that I really respect that can get out of the United States or have multiple passports is getting out of the United States. In fact, the United States, I think, has the highest level of multiple passport citizens of any country, because people understand that this is not safe. This is not sustainable. Our economy, and you look at inflation in other countries. Look at inflation, let's say in Argentina, right? Argentina has the highest level of inflation in the world right now. There was a point where that inflation started. And that is something, now I don't think it's going to go to 200% and whatever here in the United States, but there's a point where these things start, and the smart people are paying attention to that because they see what's coming. Do you remember we had Peter Schiff on the show? I think it was a year ago. Yeah. He said back, maybe 2 years. I don't know. We had him.
2 years.
That's crazy. Wow. How long have we been doing this, David?
Yeah.
But we had him on the show. And do you remember then he said, if you need to make a big purchase, do it right now. If you need to buy an appliance, if whatever it is you need to buy it right now, because it's about to be way more expensive. And what happened? It's now way more expensive.
It was right. Yeah. Yeah, well, this is why the idea of now the current administration saying that, the economy is doing, no, the economy is not doing well. It's doing bad. And as a matter of fact, now the alternative to Biden is no different. What do we expect? Do you think that Trump's going to do the right thing? No, Trump is for Trump. Again, to me, I call a spade a spade. The guy is already in for the support of Israel, given whatever his ties to that. But he's no different. He's not going to be different. We don't have any leadership. We've been saying this so many times. It's because we don't have an understanding of what the ramification of our decisions that we make that impact the average person here in the United States.
Right.
That is the fundamental issue. Then you have politicians in Congress that are, to me, it's useless as far as serving the interest of the American people. They are useful to the lobbyists, but useless to the American people. And with that kind of setting, you're not going to see anything changing. And to put all this within the context of Iran and Israel confrontation, if that open war sort of breaks out, then we're looking at adding more to our place that we can even handle. That's why I always say, I think Israel didn't think through the bite off more that it could chew on. That is for us getting involved, it's just going to be another tarnish period in our history, given what we did in Iraq, given what we did in Afghanistan, and we didn't even win the conflict. So what makes us think, this time around we can involve? And Iran, let me just tell you something from my own experience being on the ground in West Asia, being one who wrote books about some countries in the region. I've dealt with some military high-ranking over there, with some high-ranking officials in the governments when I was still in Washington. Let me tell you something. Iran is not Iraq. Iran is not some home country, like whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Iran does have a formidable force, and they just, They're pragmatic. They're thinking in terms of let's not react emotionally. Of course, they had to react. They had to retaliate.
Right.
But at the same time, they are very calculating. And I remember reading about the new chief of staff, General Bakri. He's the guy on the left right here. Very, very shrewd, smart guy. That's his picture right here. Very clear. They think strategically. You know, do they want to invite a war on their turf? No, they don't. But at the same time, the war in the 21st century is going to be very different from what we were accustomed to back then. Yeah. That's the way I see it. So where the challenge is going to be is for some Arab and Muslim countries, where they're going to stand. We already saw what Jordan did. You know, I will add Saudi Arabia to the list. I will add Lebanon to the list, Lebanese government, because remember, in Lebanon, it's very divided, not the age group there. Then I will add Egypt, of course. There's some other Muslim countries in the Gulf states. No, you can't trust those, United Arab Emirates and all those. So it becomes now the question of, okay, if this to be an open war, it's going to go beyond just Israel and Iran. That's the way I see it. But energy will be the first order of business. That will be a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. And you will see the squeeze globally as to the energy supply to other countries and so forth. This is why you're seeing what countries like China is doing by ensuring certain routes will have access to all those. So, and I do believe that Russia and China will get involved behind closed doors, not openly, of course. I will go as far as even North Korea will add it to them.
Yeah. Well, and so it's interesting that you bring up Russia and China, because I think that is a deciding factor in the de-escalation, more or less, of this. Because you're right, if Iran was alone, if they had no allies externally, if they had no other countries that were really there backing them up, I think this would have been a very different situation. But it's not, and they are not alone. And I think that very much factors into the fact that, because you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, like I don't fundamentally believe in an eye for an eye, but pretty much globally, everybody.
I do because it is. I mean, how would you explain someone come over to your house, destroy part of your house? What would you do? Are you going to say, well, it's okay, you made a mistake, please don't do it again? Or you're going to have to retaliate to put things in perspective?
Well, so if there was an organization, for example, so hypothetically, because this isn't really what's happening in the world, okay? We don't have We don't really have a judicial system. We don't have a system where there is a third party who can come in and administer justice. And I think that's one of the biggest I guess, criticisms of the parties that are supposed to be doing that, the parties that are supposed to be stepping in and really moderating between these situations. It's just not happening. And so that's a huge criticism of them. And if you look at the ICJ, the International Criminal Court, ICC, if you go and look at them, that's one of their biggest criticisms, is fundamentally they're not doing that, right? But hypothetically, that's one of the organizations that's supposed to be keeping justice in that way. But because that isn't happening, I do understand, Iran didn't have much of a choice. They had to retaliate in some way. But if they were going to retaliate, they retaliated in a way that caused very little not no damage, but very little damage. And
the little damage, it was targeted towards a military installation. Because look at the nature of the targets.
Right.
They didn't target civilians.
They did not target civilians, which unfortunately is not something, it's something that the other party says that they do, but does not appear to be that way based on numbers. But it's so it's interesting because Netanyahu really did have to sort of step down his reaction, because at the beginning, Israel basically said, we're gonna hammer Iran in retaliation. But then as the hours sort of ticked by, they had to bring their reaction down and bring their reaction down and bring their reaction down. And I do think that is as a direct result of the pressure that they were getting from the global stage.
Well, not 100%. Not 100%. Yeah. Not 100%, because it was the statement by the Iranian president, Raisi. Raisi said that next time you do some crazy things, we're going to escalate the retaliation. Mm-hmm. That's what concerned the Israelis inside. It's not the world is useless when it comes down to pressure in Israel. We are seeing what's going on right now. Yeah. Where was the world when no aid was getting into Gaza, for example, whatever? The international institutions are useless because they are controlled by Western entities.
Okay, I will say this also, though, because I do agree with that, but unfortunately, oh man, and this sucks and it hurts my heart, but unfortunately, there's no economic incentive, because if you look at why things are done on a global stage, they're done because of economics. Almost 100% of the time, they're done because of economics in one way or another, whether that's personal economics and somebody is getting paid off in some way, or they're getting some kind of benefit in some way, or it's like a wider economics like oil, for example, and oil stability. Mm-hmm. So the world is stepping in a very different way, at least as far as I can tell, in this sort of wider Middle Eastern conflict, where they didn't necessarily in the Gaza situation, because in the Gaza situation, there was not a direct economic, unfortunately, man, it actually,
well, hold on. There is an economic incentive there.
Okay. What is it?
You're looking at a $500 billion worth of untapped gas under Gaza.
Right, but
it's not there yet.
Point, right?
Yeah. No, I see what you mean. Go ahead. And that is the reason to why all of a sudden we're seeing the major events erupt. But now with the idea of attacking, when Israel attacked the consulate of Iran in Syria, one to me was like, okay, why did he didn't attack the Iranian embassy or consulate in Washington, D.C., or in Canada, or in France, or in, you know what I mean? I see your point as far as the economic angle to it. And this is the reason why I also believe that other major powers, the likes of China and Russia, will get involved one way or another, should this go outside the parameters of, if it becomes an open war. I agree. I don't see it go in that direction. I hope it doesn't go to that direction, because Israel now got the message from Iran that next time you do some crazy stuff, meaning Israel, we will ratchet up the intensity of the retaliation. And I can only read between the lines as geopolitical analyst. I can just read between the lines. We are saying we will bring in the big guns. That's basically in our lingo. That's what the Iranians are saying.
Yep.
And I can see them doing that. So.
Well, and it's interesting that you brought that up, David, because if this were any other country, because you're right, in a sense, Iran's actually been fairly tolerant, because an embassy, the way an embassy is looked at is it's foreign land. It's land that is whatever that country whose embassy it is, it's their land. And so it's exactly.
Sovereignty.
And so for them basically to have retaliated in this way, like, yes, it's kind of like a big show because there was a whole bunch of drones and there's a whole bunch of missiles and all of that. They were large in number, but they were not large in strength, and they were very easily overcome. They're very easily shot down.
Not all of them. By the way, the Western have been saying that we shut down most of them.
Right.
No, There were a lot of them that went through. But again, they were targeted towards specific targets, like military installations. And do you know that the US spends about $1 billion that night on the defense stuff for Israel? So makes you just wonder. Yeah, $1 billion.
Yeah.
In one night, because there were some fireworks in the sky per se. So, and again, Iran didn't use its advanced missile systems. I argued back then, and again, I fall back to my writings way back for what I was seeing coming. And I used to say, should Israel attack Iran, it needs to be prepared that it will be showered. I used the term. I remember one of the articles I wrote back then. I said it will be showered because Iran produces so much.
Yeah.
So much as far as missile technology, thanks to the support from Iran, from Russia, and North Korea to a degree, and the Chinese to a degree, but Chinese didn't go as far as the Russians did. But because China's interest more in cooperation with, even though he was a high-ranking general from China back in 2017 or 18, made the trip to Iran. I covered it in one of my articles back then. I disclosed it in my Iran book. That to me was a sign of the cooperation, the deepening of the military cooperation between Iran and China. For one reason and one reason only, is that China sees the opportunity of the shifting sand of the geopolitical landscape in the region.
Yep.
That was back then. We're talking about a decade ago or so. And here it is. That's exactly what is happening. So.
Yep. And you guys well know, I think that there are pluses and minuses to what China is doing in certain ways. But one thing I will absolutely give China credit for is that their strategy is really on point. They pay attention to strategy, and they pay attention to very long-term strategy. And you're right. Now we're seeing that play out. And it's interesting because people like you, who are geopolitical analysts back in the day, you knew it was coming.
It was just a matter of time, and I kind of kept my eyes open into all that and saying, okay, this is where I see it going, and here we are. This is exactly what, you look at it now just for who's visiting China, by the way, which, by the way, remember, guys, to join me later on for I'll do a conversation about Germany in China. Do you know that Olaf Scholz is in China?
Yeah, so some interesting stuff's going on with Germany, man. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, I put the link for you guys for later on. So, but here's the thing: it makes you just think and wonder why all of a sudden Germany is going. Is it going on behalf of the EU or is it going on behalf of Germany? It's the same thing France did last time when Macron won over to China by himself first. So makes you just wonder, because that shows you the division that exists within Western alliances, despite what you hear otherwise. The Ukraine conflicts exposed that division. Now this issue with Iran and Israel is also exposing, because here is the narrative that is coming out of the even Scholz himself. The incompetent Scholz, you know what he said when he was in China? Well, Iran shouldn't have done that. Well, wait a minute. Why didn't you say Israel shouldn't have attacked the consulate in Iran?
Right.
It just shows you the double standards. And second thing is, he's going all the way to China, not the US, to beg for assistance because the German economy is crumbling.
Yep.
And so that's the way I see it. And this Iran conflict is going to expose, hypothetically, if it gets to an open war, which again I don't foresee, because the stakes will be high.
Yeah, the
very
consequences
high.
are too high. If it gets to an open war, the consequences are too high. And I think all of the parties with cooler heads know that.
Except that you don't see those parties in the West. Yeah. You heard what the prime minister, another incompetent Sunak said. We shut down the missiles or whatever, the rockets that Iran launched, whatever. Well, why didn't you shut down the missiles that Israel launched on the consulate? Sunak is just another, puppet. Simple as that. All you have to do is read and listen to their statements. It will give you an idea. It will give you an idea about where the narrative is going.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That is where the challenge that, at least for you guys here in our channel, you are at least, what's the word? I don't want to use the term informed. Aware. You are aware of how to read the differences and between the statements coming out of these incompetent leaders in the West. So that is one thing we are so excited to have contributed to, for you to start to read between the lines. So that's the
absolutely.
Let's say thank you to Francis.
Oh, thank you, Francis. And then there's
it.
another one in there too, David.
Let me see it. Where is it? Because I was like, when we do, right there. You got it?
Yeah. Well, it won't say. I don't know why. Okay, there it is.
I let it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And usually I always tell the audience here, when we do the live stream ourselves, and if they are super stickers, I'll interrupt whatever and say thank you. When we do interview with guests, we usually don't do that because we don't want to interrupt that one.
So I want to read one more statement, and then guys, if you have questions, put a question, and then David, you want to take maybe one or two questions. We're not going to be on the next platform after this.
Yeah, Elizabeth has some stuff to deal with. She has to go. And so I decided I don't want to do the Rumble, the location by myself. So we will push it in next week and we'll do it together.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll do questions. Why not?
Yeah. So let's take a couple questions, put the word question in front. But I want to read this quote really quickly, David, because this, I think, fundamentally is the big question. So this is this comes from Washington Post. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has asked the Israel Defense Force to provide target options, according to an official familiar with high-level discussions, who said Israel is looking at options that would send a message, send a message, but not cause casualties. So I think that's an interesting way to say that, because what is the message that's being sent? Do you know what I mean? Like, what actually is that message? Is that message that we can hit you and you can't hit back and we are in charge? Do you know what I mean? Because fundamentally, I think that is the message. The message is we can hit you, you can't hit back, we get the last word. But I will say this. Who argues that way? Children.
Yeah.
Children argue in that, like, I have to get the last word. You can't have the last word. I'm the one that's in charge of this. You are not in charge of this. That is very childlike in its communication style, right? So what is the message? The message is you can't beat us. You know what I'm saying? What is the message that's trying to be sent here?
Yeah. There is another also alternative from a military standpoint of view, which has to do with PSYOPs. Usually, because remember, when Iran mentioned we will retaliate, what happened in Israel inside? People panicked.
Yeah.
The shelves were running out of goods. People were leaving Israel because the part of the PSYOPs of it. It was for reason why Iran said it right away, but they didn't react after it right away. They waited. It's the same argument I will make from the idea that IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, is saying we can, in addition to what you said, which is true, it just for the fact is that attacking nuclear facilities, Iranian nuclear facilities, you won't be able to get to them because they are so deep, so deep underground. So, and to do that, you have to get all the way to Iran's airspace, where you won't be able to, because Iran has acquired the Russians their S-300 missile systems and in the process of acquiring the S-400. If you know anything about these two systems, They are deadly accurate. This is the whole reason for why we wanted to sanction Turkey for buying the S-400 missile systems, because Turkey is a NATO member. And speaking of Turkey, while I'm thinking about it, did you know that it would be an implication for Turkey if a war breaks out between Iran and Israel?
Oh, that's interesting. Why?
Well, yeah, because Turkey is a Muslim country.
Yeah.
And
Turkey's playing
Turkey
sides here.
Well, they play on both sides, of course, because they were supplying weapons to Israel. That's why you can't trust Muslim countries. I'll say straightforward. I mean, after what the Jordanian king did, that to me was like same thing with the Egyptian guy, the Saudi guy, all of them. So I won't trust, because to them the Palestine issue, whatever, it serves their interest. They are all about ensuring to stay in power. That is what's at the heart of it. In the case of Turkey, because Turkey is already at odds with the United States, and this would provide, because Turkey always looks at what's in it for me as an opportunity. That's where, and mind you that Turkey is going to now be establishing some relations with Egypt as far as improving some facts regarding this. Economics, of course.
Well, Turkey's in a very challenging position economically. So it's very interesting watching what they're doing right now, because Turkey more or less is doing this like all sides deal in the open, right? Where like a lot of governments sort of try and hide what they're doing. They're doing it in the open.
That's true.
It's very interesting to watch, and it's interesting to watch, Turkey become the largest supplier to the U.S. for ammunitions, while also presenting itself as a broker between Ukraine and Russia. Like we've got an interesting deal going on right now.
That's true. The worst is Egypt, because Egypt's economy is very, very in bad shape. It's very fragile. And we can push it one direction or another if they don't toe the line the way we want them. That's the same thing for Jordan.
Yep.
So the whole do you know the survival of the monarchy depends on the West?
Yeah.
Yeah. What Jordanians do not know is that we do have presence on the Jordanian territory. So that's the extent of what I can share.
That is totally fair. That's important information. Okay, do you want to dive into a couple questions?
Sure.
All right, Army with Harmony. Let's start with this. Can you name a cooler head in Israel?
None.
No.
None. They don't have, because the far right governments, all of them, they have to toe the line, and none. So.
I will say that I think some of the people in Israel.
Well, that's true, but the people
cooler heads.
But the people are not in position to make decisions.
I know.
Look at us here.
Isn't that terrible?
It is terrible.
David, isn't that fundamentally wrong?
Yeah. So that's true. That is true. Let's see another question here.
I found one. Oh, I found a good one. Harry C., I saw you, but now I can't find you again.
Here, is it this one? Right there. Question. How is Argentina doing after the crazy man president took power? Argentina is believe it or not, he's in pivot, but it's too late. It's too late. I will say, do not let Argentina into BRICS.
Yeah. Well, because it's unstable. Argentina is fundamentally unstable right now.
Yeah, and economically is a basket case. So why would you want to bring a member that is a dead weight?
Yeah.
So, and because that guy wasn't even qualified to be in a position of president, but we propped him up. We flew him over to the White House. We gave him the marching orders, and you saw the outcome. So that is that's what the country is not doing well.
No, and he has really had to walk back a bunch of his policies because they were so extreme. And I understand, their inflation is unbelievably high. They're in a they're in not a great position fundamentally. It's not like he was, it's not like he was elected because, the country was doing so amazing, right? I think fundamentally people wanted really big change. But I think, the people who are not politicians, right? People who are really, okay, let me rephrase that, because to me, a politician and a real political strategist, because there are people like, for example, I think Lavrov is a political strategist. I think, who is his counterpart in China? I forgot his name.
Mr.
Wang Yi. Absolutely. Absolutely a political strategist. They're geopolitical strategists, but fundamentally they understand policy, they understand politics, they understand government structure, they really understand the game, right? I don't feel that the Argentinian president really understood that. I also don't necessarily feel that our politicians, whether incoming or currently for the most part, also understand how this game works. A lot of them are lawyers. A lot of them are random people, that decided they had enough money to run for something. And then all of a sudden they're there. And it really is a money game and not a qualified candidate game. It's a perception game and not a qualified candidate game. And we should really be looking for people who are qualified candidates. Like, for example, if you're going to have a surgery, you don't want the most popular person being a surgeon. You want the highest trained, the most effective, experienced person, not the one who has the best PR campaign. Do you know what I mean? This, in a sense, is more important than that, because it's dealing with mass amounts of people and their well-being.
Yeah. I'll do the last question here, okay? We'll do the last one. Yeah, this is not sort of weird, but it will be fair here. From CLO, question: will you answer all questions, or will you only answer questions that support your anti-West bias? Well, I have to respectfully disagree with your statements or questions, that is, because first of all, the question is formed the wrong way. Well, not anti-West bias. No, that's nonsense. I'll answer the questions that make sense, are pragmatically convenient for our viewers to learn from. If there is a question that is talking about some nonsense stuff, I don't waste our viewers' time. That's the reason. But as far as being anti-West, I respectfully disagree with you. What do you have to say, Elizabeth?
I'm going to take it one step further and say that is downright insulting to ask.
Yeah.
We live in the West. I love this country. I love being in the West. What I hate is watching what is happening to it. What I hate is watching my city turn into a cesspool. So that to me is downright insulting, because when a ship is sinking, what do? You sit there and say, oh, no, this is okay. No, you try and bail the water out, and you try and bail that ship out. And so how dare you even ask a question like that? Yeah. Because I love this country. David, you have given some of the best parts of your life for this country. My husband too. To make this someplace where people are taken care of, where we do something good for the world. And if you just sit there and you say, oh, well, it's anti-West to criticize the things that are bringing a country down, that to me is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to watch our country fall into chaos. There are good people here. My family is here. And so to me, how dare you ask that? And how dare you not demand better from your country? If you are American, how dare you not demand better from your country? Yeah. So that is what I have to say about that. Yeah. And that type of question is the type of question where you should ask yourself, whoever it is that asks that, you should ask yourself what you are doing for this country. Are you helping to feed those who have no food? Are you helping to bring truth to people who are lied to every day? What are you doing? What are you doing to make the country better? Because most of our viewers, you guys are out there spreading truth. You guys are spreading honor. You're spreading respect. You're trying to make the world a better place with us. You're trying to bring peace to this country and to the world. That is what we are here for, is to bring peace to this world.
So to this person, say hello. I'll tell you, just I do forgive you. Okay, maybe you want to learn something from this community. So I'm going to let it go this time around. Okay, so I will greatly appreciate if you want to contribute to the conversation. Of course, you can ask your questions. I might disagree with them, but you do have the right to ask. But please refrain from this nonsense stuff. But if you don't have anything to contribute, I would appreciate if you refrain from even asking questions and waste our viewers' time. So
because
we'll let it go.
Disrespectful. Yeah. It's disrespectful to the viewers. Anyway, I love this country and I want to see the world have peace. And if that is something you guys also want, I want to build up this community in peace, David. And guys, let me know if that is something that you guys really want, is to build this community up in peace. Because what else would be better than having the world work together in cooperation to bring peace and prosperity to everyone? Indeed.
Well, we're going to have to end it on a good note by taking one more question. So, and I'm going to...
Okay, thank you.
Johannes Dharma, thank you for your question. What did China do to become enemy and condemned? Wow, that's a good question. I can tell you quickly.
Wait, bring that back up, David. Sorry, Can you bring that back up? What did China do to do what?
What did China do to become enemy and condemned? In other words, why are we categorizing China as the enemy and condemning it? So.
Oh, I don't think we are.
No, we are. We are condemning China, and we are perceiving China as the enemy.
Wait, who is we? The United States?
US, the West. Yes, the West. Yeah. I was like, I kind of no. I know what he meant. That's the question in general term. And I am very familiar with this because I have to take you back to Cold War. During that time, the world was bipolar, as you may know, East and West. The Soviet Union and the United States. During that time, the so-called enemy was identified. We moved forward, and once the Cold War ended, we were still under that thinking that we have to maintain the status of an enemy, either real or perceived. That is the reason why now it's China's turn. There is also another reason to that why China became the enemy is because China moved faster in such a short term, about 3 decades plus, to surpass us in certain domains. I'm talking technology. And that it didn't settle well with us. So what you want to do, you want to slow down that progress by any means. And the first thing you do is you label that country as the enemy, either perceived or real. That's beside the point, is the perception. That is the reason why we are, in collective West, that is, categorizing China as the enemy or being condemned. I mean, look at now just the trips of Western leaders going to China. Why aren't they coming to the US? They're going to China. So that just tells you the story right there.
So David, interestingly enough, did you listen to Janet Yellen talking about China?
I did.
She just went to China. And one of the things, there's sort of like a general conversation that's happening right now about flooding the market with cheap Chinese goods. And that undermining the United States in terms of the manufacturing that the US is sort of trying to build up right now. And so if you look at that conversation, I think that's where the answer is, right? So the United States is very far behind in terms of manufacturing, and that stuff doesn't get built up overnight. You know what I mean? That's not just like, wow, we can build this up tomorrow. And so I think that the United States is a little bit too late trying to play catch up economically, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of how the United States got behind. And there could have been policy put in place decades ago where we did not outsource to other countries for things.
Yeah.
We did not outsource our manufacturing to other countries. Maybe should have, I don't know, but there could have been policy put in place decades ago, but there wasn't. And so now there is, something that's made in the United States is unfortunately a lot more expensive than something that's made in China. And most of the big box stores, most of their stuff is made in China, and it's so cheap because it's made in China. So we have an economic, not war, but an economic disinterest in China's rise. And unfortunately, it's what's happening. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I hope you find this very informative. Are we doing any locals on Thursday?
I believe so. So keep an
not sure. Well, yeah, just keep an eye on. Well, of course, if we are going to do it, we will post it ahead of time, so you will know ahead of time. So, as always, prepare yourself for changing world order. Till next time. Bye-bye.